On this lesson, we are going to look into array. We will see some examples on how to use array in C#. But before we begin, let's have a short discussion of what is an array. And let's see the differences between a regular variable and an array variable. Arrays are used to store multiple values in a single variable, instead of declaring separate variables for each value. Let's see an example on how we create a regular integer variable. Normally, we used to write the data type int followed by the name of the variable, that is n, and the value that we want to assign to our variable. In the memory representation in C#, it will look like this. N will contain a value of 100. But for an array variable, the way we declare array variable is we start with a data type and then followed by the square braces and then the name of the variable, and then the values that we want to assign to our array variable. In this example, we have an integer array variable named n, which will contain the 5, 4, 3, 10, and 7. In C#, the representation of this in the memory will look like the following. So your n will contain 5, 4, 3, 10, and 7. And these are called the values of n. And this array basically contains what we call the indices. Indices defines the position of each value of an array. For our first value, which is 5, it has an index of 0. And for our 4, it has an index of 1. For our 3, it has an index of 2, and so on and so forth. So the indices usually starts from 0 and onwards. So let's have an example on how we can use array in our C# programming. To start using array, let's write first the data type that you want to use for our array. Let's say int, followed by the square braces, and then the name of our variable. In this case, we will name it num. And then we will define the size of our array. So for this example, the size of our array will be 5 indices. And then we will assign a value for each index, line by line. For our index 0, we will give this a value of 10. And then for index 1, we will give this a value of 5. And then for index 2, we will give this a value of 3. And then we will keep on doing this until we reach the index of 4. Okay, so there you go. So on this line, we declared an array, and that array is num with an integer data type. And we initialized our array to have a size of 5. So meaning we have 5 elements. So when we say 5 elements, our indices starts from 0 going to 4. And then for each index we have in our num array, we give it a value of 10, 5, 3, 25, and 20. Okay, so there you go. This is how you declare an array with a specific size and then assigning a value for each index in your array. Let's try displaying the value of each index of our array. We will use 4. 4 and then followed by int I is equals to 0, and then while I is less than or equal to 5 or 4, and then I plus plus, and then we will write here console that right line the value of our num with the following index coming from our I. There you go. And then we'll write here console that read line. We wrote here the 4 int I equals 0, meaning we are going to start our counting from 0 while I is less than or equal to 4, and on this case our I is only 0. So this means that this condition here is true because 0 is less than 4. And then it will display this, and then it will go back incrementing our I by 1, and then it will test this again. Since 1 is less than 4, it will again do this, and then it will increment our I by 1 again, and 1 added by 1 becomes 2, and 2 is less than 4, so this means that this is true, and then it will execute this all over again. So it will keep on doing that until I is no longer less than or equal to 4. So if this becomes false, that's the time that it will go onto this line. Now take note of this class. I did not include the curly braces here, but you may include that. Okay, you can also add curly braces here. But since what we want here is to execute only one line, which is the console.write line, since what we want to execute is only one line, only a single line, so there's no need to add the curly braces. It's only applicable to omit curly braces if you only have one line to execute. But if you have multiple lines that you want to execute for a certain block of if, for, or while, then that's the time you have to enclose your statement with curly braces. So let's give this a try. So there you go, we have displayed the value of our array from 10 down to 20. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out, and let's have a different example of using array. So this time I will write here another integer, or let's use double, let's say num, and then I will write here the value for our num, 100, 300, 450, then 500. We forgot to include the square braces. And then let's use the 4. Again, I have to type 4 here. Then remove the curly braces. I choose 3 here because we only have 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then followed by console.write line. Okay, so there you go. Then let's give this a try. Let's run the application. Oops, we are missing something here. We only have 3 lines, which should be 4 lines. No, I guess we have to change 3 to 4. Okay, let's give it a try again. Okay, so there you go. So we have two different forms on how to use array. So the first one is you declare array and then you specify the size. And then the second way of declaring an array is you declare an array and then immediately assign the value of the array. Let's have another way of iterating through our indices on our array. Instead of using 4, let's try, I'm going to copy and paste this, then paste this at the bottom. Then let's change this to I is less than equal to num dot length. Okay. So the num here is the variable that we have on this line, and then the length here is a member of this array object, which returns the number of indices or the number of elements for our array. So let's give this a try again. Okay, so there you go. And then index out of bounds. Why is that the index out of bounds? So we have to start at 0, and the length returns the number of elements that we have here, starting from 1, 2, 3, 4. And 4 is the last element, but we want to access the index, so this I gives us 4. So therefore, 4 it's outside the bounds of our array, so we have to subtract here 1, so that we'll be able to stop at 3. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so let me discuss this to you. We wrote here a counter variable which will start at 0, and then we will execute this line whenever I is less than or equal to the number of indices, to the number of elements that we have here. So how many elements do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 elements. This will give us 4. But of course, our counting for our array starts from 0. So it should not be 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be 1. It should be 0, 1, 2, 3. But the length gives us 4. So that is why we have to subtract 1 here, so that it will appear that we are counting like 0, 1, 2, 3, because our first index has a position of 0. So that is why we have to subtract 1 from here. So we can avoid our array to have an out of bounds index. Okay, so there you go. Then let's give it a try. There you have it. Okay. So let's have another example on using array. I am going to comment out this again. So this time let's try string. And then we will add here hello world. And then for okay, so name is a string variable and we assign a value hello world to our name. Remember class, that name here is a string and string are collection of characters. So each letter here is considered character. Now we can print each character we have on our name by using this form. Okay, for I, we'll start at 0, and then while I is less than to the length, meaning the number of characters that we have here, then of course we have to minus 1 because the counting starts at 1. But since we are dealing with the index, it should start at 0. But that is not the case for length. It starts at 1. So that is why we have to subtract by 1 for our length. And then after that, we display our name. So let's give this a try. So there you go. We were able to display each character of our string in separate lines. Okay. So this is also called an array of characters. Your string is an array of characters. So let's have another example. I am going to comment this out again. And then let's write here string cars this time. I'll put an array here. Then we will assign the values of our indices here. Let's say the last item, Toyota Hilux. And then we will read each item that we have on this array using the for. For I, we'll start at 0, and then I, y less than or equal to cars.length minus 1, I plus plus. Then we will include here console.writeLine cars I. Okay, so what we have here is that we created an array variable with a data type of string, and that variable is cars. So we assign values to our cars array using the following string values: Ford Raptor, Ford Everest, up to Toyota Hilux. We iterate index by index inside of our cars using the for loop statement, and then let's try what will be the effect of this. Okay, so there you go. We have Ford Raptor, Ford Everest, Kia Picanto, and Toyota Hilux. So let's apply some sorting in our cars array variable. So let's use the array class. Then let's type sort. And then let's write here our array variable cars. What this line will do here is that it will arrange the elements of our cars in ascending order. So what is the first item that will be displayed? So it will be the Ford Everest, followed by Ford Raptor, then Kia, and then Toyota. So we will do this on the next line. There you go. And then let's copy and paste this so that we'll be able to see the unsorted items and the sorted items. Let's try creating a separation between these two loops by adding this line, console.writeLine. Okay, so let's give it a try. This is the result for our first loop, and this is the result for our second loop. Observe that the Ford Raptor became the second item on our second loop, and the Ford Everest becomes the first item in our second loop. This is because of the sort method we used for our cars. That's all for this video, and then see you in the next lectures.